Welcome to landlubbers and seamen alike. Here we are, somewhere in the bowels of PBS SoCal, for another episode of Won't You Be My Gamer, and we're learning about pirates again. I'm Elise Willems.
I'm Nicole Zavalich.
And today we are joined by Dr. Rebecca Simon, who is a pirate history expert. Thanks for coming back, Rebecca.
You're
we
welcome.
never know if people are going to come back.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
And you're here to tell us more about pirates. Help us. We've slowly been going through our list of pirate myths and misconceptions. It hurts us to know that some of them are myths, as we were playing Skull and Bones, but now we've moved on to another game, right, Nicole?
Yeah, now we are playing Sid Meier's Pirates. Now this is going to be a more modern remake of the original game, but this is still through and through the original. Already named myself the Dread Pirate Rizzo.
I love that.
In honor of
That's
you, Elise.
Some other Treasure Island, Rizzo the Rat reference.
That's great.
You know.
So let's, I'm going to do the second difficulty because
Good journeyman.
I'm modern, and then I also am not in it to win it, so let's stick with fencing. But what I think is interesting is the different start dates. So we can start around the 1590s, we can do 1620, we can do, the War for Profit, 1640, the Buccaneers hero, 1680s, and then the Pirate Sunset, kind of like the end of this. Now, all of these considered the golden era.
So this is all part of kind of the very beginning of the Golden Age of piracy. And historians generally say that the Golden Age of piracy started around 1650. So it's actually including some time periods that's even before that. But that's going to be a time where we're going to start seeing a lot of colonization, like 1600 to 1640. And it becomes very politically unstable when war breaks out between Britain and Spain. And when you have political instability, your resources are extremely stretched, which gives it a perfect opportunity for people like pirates to kind of start congregating in different parts and harassing ships and sometimes getting hired by governments. And those are people called privateers who have contracts called letters of marque, and they're basically kind of legally sanctioned pirates.
I think that's exactly us right now. Like I think that no, for real, I think that we are privateers, like we're private pirates, like a private dancer. And it's,
if you're signing a board with anyone, then you're not a pirate, you're a privateer.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we're starting out with who do we side with?
This should be Sid Meier's Privateers.
Yeah.
Technically speaking.
Yeah.
I have a note.
Yeah. Who is the lesser evil here?
So,
Is
well, the
there one?
English are eventually going to win against the Spanish. The Dutch actually don't really have too much going on in the Caribbean. They'll get Suriname, and then they'll actually get like Southeast Asia a bit. France is there, and they're kind of harassing the Spanish, but they don't really get too involved. They get a little involved with the war, the Anglo-Spanish War, but not quite as much.
Yeah.
So,
The lesser of four evils, who would you say?
it depends what you would mean by lesser.
True.
Yeah, I'm feeling the
Yeah.
Spanish personally.
Spanish, like they're hardcore.
Yeah,
They're the ones that are doing all the hardcore colonizing. They're the wealthiest, and they're the ones everyone's fighting against.
They're kind of the evil of the evil. But like, let's be them.
So you were kind of saying that a lot of these pirates would sort of capitalize when they saw strife, they saw discord, they saw other warring factions, they would sort of swoop in and monopolize.
Oh yeah, it was a really good time because you'd have like royal navies and you'd have authorities that are just really focused and putting the resources elsewhere. And so pirates, the Royal Navy actually didn't really go after pirates as much as we
Really?
think. Yeah, because they felt that pirates were a nuisance, but they preferred to put their energy into warfare and defense. It was something called the High Court of Admiralty in Britain that was specifically in charge of all the maritime laws, and it was their job to go after pirates and capture them and then bring them to justice, which usually meant a public execution.
In contemporary law, we have things like maritime law, international waters,
Yeah.
etc. Ships flying under different nations, flags and things like that. How did that work in the regard to jurisdiction when it came to piracy?
For the most part, it was the Admiralty that was in charge of everything, and if someone who was not part of the Admiralty captured a pirate, like maybe a Coast Guard or a pirate hunter, they would deliver them to the Admiralty.
Like there was obviously battle happening. There was strife. But was there any diplomacy happening between, pirates and these like official governments, or even within? I'd love to know within, different ships and.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there was a bit in a way. So first off, there were governors that actually did either turn a blind eye to pirates or they would even help out pirates. And this is because as part of the Anglo-Spanish War, Britain passed what's called the Navigation Acts. And what these were laws that banned British colonies from trading with anyone outside Britain or another British colony. And the idea was to cripple the economies of Britain's competition. And so governors would turn to pirates, because pirates could bring in these goods from ships that they're stealing from. In fact, one of the reasons why pirates would later go to the Bahamas, to a city called Nassau, was because a former governor named Nicholas Trott let pirates keep their goods there, or let pirates sell their goods there. And so it was kind of known as a place to go. And a lot of times pirates would actually be pretty diplomatic to the ships that they would rob. Pirates wanted to get in and out as fast as they could with as few casualties as they could. And so they would negotiate with captains and quartermasters to make sure that they could get what they wanted and then go with as little trouble as possible.
Now, in Skull and Bones, we saw some uniforms, some costumes that were accurate to not so much. How do I feel about these outfits?
Yeah, no, these outfits work as well.
Guy's wearing a golf polo in the middle, though. How do we feel about that?
And like exclusively vests.
He's having a Brat Summer on the left.
Yeah, he is.
I just learned what that means.
You do see some vests kind of pop up, and those could have different purposes. One, it was to make you maybe look a bit higher ranking. It was another item of clothing to protect your clothing or from the sun.
Is the Dread Pirate Rizzo engaging in any diplomacy right now? Because he's privateering and all that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right now we are sailing for the Spanish, and the Spanish are like, our enemies are everyone. So French, Dutch, and English, we are allowed to blow them up.
Something interesting is that this says this is Stede Bonnet, the fifth most notorious pirate. He's way outside the time period that you're currently playing. He was a pirate in like 1717.
Oh, well, that's
So
outside
just
any version of this game.
fact.
Yeah.
Kind of fun fact there.
It seems like Sid Meier was just making up what he wanted to make up for this game.
Is he not the historian I thought he was?
There was a lovely young woman there.
Yeah, so let's talk about the ladies
Yeah,
here.
let's talk, because we got wenches,
Yes.
we got women, and we got pirates.
Uh-huh.
Wench, is that nomenclature? Like, how should we feel about that as a word?
Well, today we don't really like the word, but back then the term wench just really meant like single woman, a young single woman. It was slang, but not really necessarily derogatory. So in taverns, you'd often have like these tavern wenches. And for one thing, taverns for the most part were owned by men, but it was women who operated a lot at taverns. Like, they would be the ones kind of behind the counter, taking orders, serving food, and this is because they provided a bit of a maternal aspect. Sailors came on shore wanting a hot meal, wanting a drink, and wanting any form of comfort, particularly female comfort. So women who ran taverns kind of provided it in that way. And then you would often have, the other wenches, which were really the prostitutes of the time. And they often worked at taverns. They were often employed by taverns because taverns were also inns. They had rooms that they would rent out. And prostitution was extremely common throughout the Caribbean. Brothels were extremely common, and it's because they were big money makers. In fact, it would be if they didn't have any women portrayed like that in the game in a tavern, that would be super inaccurate.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so we're on Sid Meier's side
For that, yeah.
maybe.
Well, there is still a component of this game is to be the best pirate possible, and to do that, you need the hottest possible wife. So that does go on a 1 mark against old Sid. So,
But there were women involved in piracy.
Yeah, there were female pirates. During the Golden Age of piracy, the two really famous ones were Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who sailed with Captain Jack Rackham between August and October of 1720. Anne Bonny was married to Jack Rackham, and Mary Read was part of the crew. Now, there's a lot of legend behind them. And the legend has it is that Anne Bonny and Mary Read were lovers, and Mary Read had disguised herself as a man, that they disguised themselves as men. This wasn't the case. In reality, Anne Bonny was married to Jack Rackham. That's why she was able to be on the ship. We don't know where Mary Read comes from. She's a bit of a mystery, but the governor of the Bahamas, where they sailed out from, issued a proclamation for their arrest, including the names Jack Rackham, Anne Bonny, and Mary Read. So people knew who she was. And at this point, piracy has declined quite a bit by 1720. It's getting to be less lucrative, it's becoming riskier. Anne Bonny and Mary Read, they were considered to be really, really intense pirates. They did dress in male clothing during battle. They brandished weapons, they swore more than anyone. They were extremely deadly. They had no problem killing people or taking hostages. But what's interesting is when they weren't fighting, they were wearing women's clothing. So, they weren't cross-dressing, as some people have suggested. Mary Read also was in a relationship with another pirate on board, and that could be how she got onto the ship as well. So the two of them weren't lovers. They were captured in October of 1720. Everyone in the crew were all sentenced to death. Jack Rackham was hung in November, and then about 10 days later was when Anne Bonny and Mary Read had their own trial. They were separated from the men, and they were both found guilty and sentenced to be executed, but they got what was called a stay of execution because it turned out they were both pregnant, and they weren't going to execute women who were pregnant. Now, 95% of women who were sentenced to death at the time wouldn't actually be executed. They would usually be let go at some point. So it wouldn't have happened, probably. But Mary Read did die in prison in April of 1721, possibly complications of childbirth or what was known as jail fever, what we call typhus today. Anne Bonny, we actually don't know. There was no death record at that time. There's a death record mentioning someone named Anne Bonny in Jamaica in 1731. So it's possibly she lived out the next decade of her life in Jamaica. Some believe maybe she went back home to the Carolinas where her father lived, but we're actually not sure. It's a mystery.
Now, did they have high-ranking positions on these ships that they were on, or do we not know?
We don't know what their ranking was. Anne Bonny would have had a modicum of respect being the captain's wife. And Mary Read, I'm not sure what her position was, but they fought alongside the men. So in that case, they might have been seen as equals somewhat, but they're very much the exception to the rule.
All right, Nicole, what are you trying to do here?
Well, so I got really close to this guy to make him think that we were homies. We're not. And I'm attacking him. Okay, but now I have to if you can see, my ship is way smaller.
I feel like it was a trope that we see in movies where a ship pretends like it's a ghost ship or deserted or something to, lure these superstitious pirates. Was that a thing?
Not really so much that, but the way this kind of battle is going is actually pretty accurate in terms of pirate attacks. So pirate ships were smaller for the most part, so that way they could kind of weave in and out of lots of places with craggy coasts and islands. Now, you kind of mentioned that we came really close. They think we're friends, but we're not. So ships by law had to identify themselves at sea by flying with their flag of origin.
Oh yeah, this is a good one. This is what we're into.
There we go, pirate flags. So pirate flags very much existed, very much so.
But not every ship had just a skull and crossbones on its
No,
flag.
so the skull and crossbones were generally just pirate ships. And so the pirate flag is very real. It was known as the Jolly Roger. And they kind of really started in the 1600s, and there would be two flags, a red flag and a black flag. And a red flag meant they would offer no quarter, meaning no mercy.
Oh.
They're going to fight to the death.
I think she won. Did you win?
Excellent. A black flag meant that you will give quarter, we'll negotiate with you. And then over time, it just became a black flag. The red flag went out of fashion. There would often be a skull and crossbones on it, and that was just simply a symbol of death. You can find it dating back hundreds of years. It was used in ship logs as a symbol to show who died at sea. And a lot of pirates began designing their own, kind of making sort of self-portraits out of it. And what they would do is pirates, they would have different flags on board, or they would do something to hail a ship as if they were in distress, and the ship would come close to them. And then once the ship was too close to go away, the pirates would reveal their flag. And the whole point of revealing their flag, you'd think why are pirates giving themselves away? To give the other ship a chance to surrender.
Okay, so now this is what leads me to my next question here, which is about a universal pirate code, because that's very underhanded. And pirates, they're all out there, they're plundering and pillage. They're all there for the same underhanded cause. But was there any kind of understood code amongst pirates?
So there were pirates that had something called the Articles, and these were kind of standard laws on pirate ships. And the point of the Articles was, one, to, you have to swear on the Articles when you join a pirate ship, and this shows that, you're loyal, you've taken the oath. But really what these Articles were was to maintain law and order on a pirate ship.
So she's got her ship here. You're transporting the governor?
I've done these transporting the governor missions several times, and I've never once successfully delivered a governor.
Is this something real that a privateer would have done?
Escort missions?
A privateer possibly, but not a pirate.
Because they would have adhered to the code of we get the governor there safely.
Right, because we're working for that specific government. But a pirate code really was about law and order on the ship. So it would basically say, pirates Goods were distributed evenly amongst the pirates. The rules specifically stated that. You know, rules saying that you had to take care of your weapons to make sure that they stayed in good condition. Some pirates had rules saying that there was no drinking or gambling allowed on board. Others saying no relationships allowed. They usually kind of listed what compensation would be if you got injured.
So say that there was some kind of altercation or fight on the ship,
Yes.
and it maybe resulted in someone being injured or even worse, dead.
Yeah.
Was there some provision in place for, like, how was that person held accountable?
So what you'd have is a council, and literally all the pirates would come together, and they would all have to come to a vote to decide the punishment.
Oh my gosh.
And they all had to be unanimous. So they'd all decide together. It wasn't just the captain who made the decision.
I just took another mission.
Swirling around each other.
It's wild that that NPC plays the way that I play, which is just like chaos.
The last thing that I want to ask you about mutiny. If things get heated or weird, it could lead to a mutiny. Was
Yeah.
that something that happened or happened often if it did?
It did happen sometimes. A mutiny was a very big deal, and you had to make, if you were unsuccessful, you would probably be executed for it. But there were some pirates who became pirate captains by successfully leading
Really?
a mutiny. Yeah, such as the pirate Henry Avery, who worked on a slaving ship, and they felt that the captain was a cruel captain withholding wages, and so Henry Avery kind of organized the other sailors to stage a mutiny, and they were successful. So generally, if there was going to be a mutiny on a pirate ship, it was more a way to oust the captain by vote. They would do it in a much more organized way. And this is usually if the captain was found withholding pay or not distributing goods equally. If pirates felt that their captain wasn't being aggressive enough to rob other ships or anything like that, then pirates would actually hold a vote to oust the captain and elect a new one, which was usually going to be the quartermaster or the lieutenant, like the second in command.
Nicole, do you think that the dread pirate Rizzo could be at risk of a mutiny? What's the temperature on the ship right now? Because there's a lot going on here. It's the governor?
Yeah.
But I thought you already got a new governor.
So I already failed on that one. So I'm trying to not fail on this one.
Why are they trying to fight you while you're trying to?
It does seem like, but it's like I'm Spanish. Like, I thought pirates had moral codes. I guess.
Where's a code of dishonor?
A code of dishonor.
I guess talk to the governor again.
Yeah.
I feel like we're.
That's the point. That's this game cycle is sail, talk to governor, and then if you're good enough, talk to governor's daughter. Like that is the gameplay loop.
Be reprimanded by governor for speaking to daughter.
It's actually pretty accurate to the time period. The 1600s is when governors would work with pirates for the most part until the Royal Navy became stronger and began outlawing it.
Well, I feel like my biggest reference for this time period is the third Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Yeah.
Where like, oh, sorry pirates, like the British Navy is here and we are not happy.
Yep, exactly.
No, I'm Spanish, but I'm a pirate. So let's fight my friend.
Yeah, this is a good finish here. We'll finish on a big
on betrayal.
Big fight, yeah.
Big old betrayal.
That's what pirates did. They would attack indiscriminately, even if it was their own country.
Really?
Was there a moral pirate? Like I know with HBO we have Our Flag Means Death, which is like playing with the idea of a moral pirate.
There were some pirates, like the pirate Captain Benjamin Hornigold. He had been a privateering captain during the War of Spanish Succession, and when the war ended, he continued on and was a big pirate captain. But he refused to attack British ships, kind of out of principle. Blackbeard, also, who was really called Edward Teach, he had a policy that the pirates could not kill anyone in battle. They were to scare and intimidate people into surrendering, but maybe injuring, but no killing.
I just feel like that works the first few times, and then once that gets around, people are like, okay, they're not going to kill us. They're just going to scare and intimidate us. So we'll be fine, no matter what happens here. You know?
All right, well, so I just took all of their gold.
Man, we've barely explored this vast ocean. And Nicole, you've got a couple little buddies with you.
I've made some friends. I've made some friends along the way, which is what pirateering's all about.
And I think we'll make more next time when Dr. Rebecca Simon joins us once again. Thank you for coming by and telling us more about pirates,
You're
Rebecca.
welcome.
Where can people learn more about you and what you do?
So you can find a lot of information on my website, which is rebecca-simon.com, and that's where you'll find links to articles I've written and podcasts I've been on. And you can also find my books on Amazon. My most recent book was The Pirate's Code: Laws and Life Aboard Ship, which is available in hardback and an ebook and will be paperback later in the year. You can also find me on TikTok. Just search Dr. Rebecca Simon and you will find me doing pirate videos, like just pirate informational videos.
I love that. I just want like tiny tidbits about pirates every day.
That's what you'll get.
I love
Tons.
that.
That's what I'm gonna get. So make sure you subscribe to Rebecca and subscribe here for more Won't You Be My Gamer at PBS SoCal. Like it. It helps us make more of these. Thank you for watching. I'm Elise Willems.
I'm Nicole Zawalich.